welcome. We'll give it a second for everything to get connected and up and running. I hope everybody had a fantastic weekend, and I am excited to welcome everybody to this week's live Monday music motivation. So for today, the topic that I sort of wanted to talk about to give you all a little bit of motivation and inspiration is just a little bit about some sort of recent sort of performance anxiety experiences that I've been sort of working on and thinking about in my own playing that I think are really relevant. First, I mentioned in the description of this that I have a book recommendation, so I'll tell you what the book is right away so you don't have to search through the whole video to try to find it. I've recently just started reading The Inner Game of Music by Barry Green, I believe it is. It comes from sort of a spin-off of a very popular book by, I believe it's W. Timothy Galway, called The Inner Game of Tennis, where he sort of explained like playing tennis at the professional level and playing very sort of competitively, but in a really enjoyable way, and sort of what differentiates those people and sort of the inner game that's happening. There's the outer game of like, you want to win your match, or for music, you want to have a good performance or win the audition or whatever it may be. But there's also that inner game happening of sort of your own self-talk and all of that kind of stuff that's going on. I really just started reading the book, but I've also been kind of experimenting and observing my own kind of performance anxiety in different situations, and can really see so many parallels between that and sort of some things that I've recently been discovering. So I want to tell you a little bit about some of the things that I've recently been thinking about in sort of my performance anxiety journey. And hopefully you can sort of use those for yourself if you're somebody who struggles with performance anxiety. So a thing that I've said for a while now is that we want to try to lower the stakes as much as possible and realize that no matter how bad the performance goes, nobody's going to die. But sometimes that's easier said than done and is a little challenging. And you don't want to lower the stakes too much where you just kind of like tune out and just go through the motions and not have a very enjoyable performance either. So it's kind of this weird fine line. But the thing that's helped me the most recently, and I've been having a ton of performances recently. Last week I had 2 concerts and first rehearsal with a new-ish group that I haven't played for or with at least in a very, very long time. And I had lots of performances this fall so far. So in some of them, I had a fair amount of performance anxiety and got really nervous and really tense. But in my performances last week, there was almost none, even though arguably the performances last week were potentially higher stakes than some that I got nervous for in the past. So I think there's a little more to it. And the thing that's kind of shifted for me is I've really been focusing on more and thinking about more just being relaxed and having fun and enjoying the performance and not trying to make it the best run through of it. I think that's where we really get in trouble. And again, I've been saying this for years, never play anything as fast as you can. Never try to be like, okay, I'm going to take this passage and I'm going to go as fast as I possibly can. You will always fail if you're sort of trying to go fast. Also, I think that applies to performing too. Don't try to make the performance your best run through of it. Of course, we want the performance to be the best run through of it, and that would be fantastic if it was. But if you try to make it your best performance, it's not going to work. There's another great thing that just popped in my head thinking about this. It's the backwards law, which was sort of coined by Alan Watts, I think in the 50s or so. And it comes from kind of Eastern teachings many probably centuries before that as well. But the backwards law basically says the harder you try to do something, the harder it becomes. You can experience this, like the classic example is sort of holding your breath. The harder you try to hold on to your breath, and when holding your breath, the more you feel like you're running out of air and the more it feels like you need to breathe. This is kind of the same thing with performing. The more you try to have the best performance that you can or try to do it the fastest that you've ever done it, the more you're going to run into trouble and sort of get in your way. And the inner game of music kind of methodology of this would be like that trying to do your best is where self one, or your kind of inner self-talk, really takes over, and you lose that connection to the creativity and the enjoyment of it. The inner game of music also talks about this idea of trying a lot. You can't try to do your best. The more you try to do your best, the harder it's going to be. I also talk about this all the time in clarinet playing with big leaps and big intervals. The more you try to get that big interval to come out, the worse it's going to go. Instead, what we should be kind of focusing on, and the energy that we want to tap into, is that energy of kind of childlike play. Imagine when you're a child and you're first learning the instrument, even, or really doing anything, but we'll stick with the instrument analogy. When you're first learning the instrument as a child, you get a few notes out at the concert and only get lost a handful of times, and you're like, oh, that was amazing, I did so good. And I think if we can kind of keep that approach of not looking at everything that didn't go exactly the way we want, and that's kind of a demerit to our playing, and instead look at how many things are going well and how great it is. And instead of saying like, oh gosh, don't mess up that big leap, instead think, oh, how beautiful and interesting can I make that big leap? Not in a, I'm trying to make it beautiful and interesting, and I'm trying to get it to go well, and it's not gonna want to go well naturally, but I'm gonna try, and I'm gonna force it to go well. Not that at all, but instead relaxing into it and exploring and experimenting and seeing like, what would that interval sound like if I made it as beautiful as possible, and just kind of going for it and having it happen. And that's really truly what I was experiencing in the performances that I had this past week. It wasn't, okay, it's performance time, there's a lot of opportunities to mess up in these pieces, I hope everything goes right. It was, I'm just going to relax and have fun. I've practiced the music. I'm technically capable of playing it. Now is my opportunity to just get to play it in front of people and continue that idea of play. I'm not performing it in a tense, has to be perfect, high stakes situation. I'm just playing it, and people get to watch me play. And first of all, I think that does yield better technical results anyways, but even if it didn't, I think somebody in the audience would prefer to watch a performer have fun and enjoy themselves with maybe 5%, 10% less technical execution than somebody who's very stiff and you can tell that they're just working like crazy and trying so hard to get the music out. And yeah, maybe it's 5 or 10% better technical execution, but I think it's 20, 30% less enjoyable to watch. So that's your food for thought on sort of performance anxiety. Remember that you're still playing, and you get to play in front of people and kind of be playing with the audience as well. Of course, they're not actively making the music with you, but they're part of that experience of a live performance. So that's my little bit of motivation and inspiration for you. Hopefully that helps, especially if you've been dealing with performance anxiety or have some performances coming up. And of course, don't forget, as with every Live Monday Music Motivation, to fill out our practice template for the week. Here's what mine looks like. You can go to quickstartclarinet.com/get-started to actually download this exact template, or just recreate it for yourself. Date for the week, reflection of how things are going, goal for what you want to accomplish this week, and then your plan for when you're going to practice and what you're going to practice. And of course, the most important part of doing this template is that you take that plan, put it in your calendar, set the reminders, however you organize your life, so you set those appointments and actually show up to do that practicing. Because when you keep practicing and you have goals and intentions behind your practice for what you want to achieve, then you'll keep moving forward in your clarinet and music journey. So that's all I have for today. I hope that you found that helpful and interesting. Thanks so much for joining, and I will see you next week in the next Live Monday Music Motivation. Have a great week.